is it because you're not wearing your coach's shirt? Do you know, like, that sounds silly, but like, I'm pretty sure if you're wearing your coach's shirt and someone comes up to you and it's like, hi, like, you're not gonna, people have resting bitch faces, I get that, but like, do you know what I mean? Like, you guys don't have resting bitch faces, I don't think.
I guess, but I was in a coaching scenario, and that's what I mean. Like, we were both coaching at the time, so it's just, but it depends. Like, it also depends on, like, you know, maybe, yeah. In this scenario, it was a morning, and that's why I said I said to this person, I was like Michael has had a hard week in general, so maybe he's just less like bubbly or enthusiastic as he normally is. And I was like, and it's also me as well. Like, we've both had a very long week without Renee here. So we've had to do more work than we normally would, like work more hours, like, you know, trying to cover for, you know, her not being here, which is not her fault. But then it's also not an excuse either. It's just like...
It happened this week when Renee was gone.
Yeah.
So there's a reason why then. Like, you can't really, like, do you know what I mean?
And that's what I mean. Like, I feel like Renee's more approachable as a coach, just because, you know, not only is she a female, she's short, she's always like smiling, bubbly, and then she's always... But that's what I mean. Like, Michael's very tall. Like, people are tall, like a giant of a man. They'll be like, oh, like if they're anxious or not confident in themselves, it's very hard to talk to someone who's, you know, larger. That's just, like, you know, human physiology. It's like, you know, at school you don't feel intimidated by the short, stubby, fat kid, but the big, tall, muscly football player, you wouldn't want to walk on the same side of the street as them. So it's it just depends on. It just depends on the person, I guess, but it also depends on your experiences. So maybe there's some external factors there for that person. Maybe they've, you know, had abusive relationships, or they've had, you know, something like, you know, a past, like a family member done something to them, or whatever it may be, which might be reading a little bit too much into it. But at the same time, it's like, I remember I said to Michael, I was like, you just need to smile more, bro. I was like, whatever it is, I was like, you just haven't been approachable this week. And I was like, I'll take that away from that person as criticism in a good way. And he was like, yeah, damn. He's like, I didn't even realize like that was how I came across. And you don't, like, when you're in the moment, like, you know, I'm unapproachable. It's like, fuck, like, you know, I thought I've been no different to what I've been any other week. And it's like, some people are like, wow, you're really approachable. And it's like, well, then they're all contradicting each other, because it's like, am I approachable or am I not? Like, tell me, like.
That's the thing though too, when you walk into a room and someone gives off like a vibe that they just don't want to be like, you know, spoken to or anything like that, we feel that. People feel that, especially women, right? But like, we do feel that, and we're like, oh, we're not going to talk to you, because especially if you're just short, you could be short in your answer, and I'll just be like, oh, okay, you're shitty, so I won't talk to you. It's like Ant, he has ADHD, don't get me wrong, but the minute he drops down in a mood and he's like less talkative, just even less talkative, we're always like, oh, he's in a mood. Even though he's not actually in a mood, he's just, we say he's in a mood.
Just less bubbly.
And that's what I guess as well. It's like, it's not just the mood that makes up for it as well. It's like, it's how much attention you're providing the other person. Like, if someone's talking to me and I'm kind of glaring off in the distance, or like I pull my phone out, or I'm like, oh, and like I'm kind of thinking of an answer, but I'm kind of giving them a broken answer, or I don't actually answer the question that they give me. I just answer something else, or I just preempt the answer. Then they're like, well, he's not listening either. So then they're less likely to approach me with a question next time. Or the alternative, if you give them your fullest attention, one of the things I like to do is, like, unless it's like the opposite scenario where I'm in the class, someone random comes over and talks to me who's not a part of a class, and then someone from the class needs to like clarify something, I will unfortunately cut the conversation with the person who's not involved and talk to the primary customer at that point. But reverse the scenario, just say a normal member is talking to me outside of class hours, and then someone else comes up and tries to talk to me, I would just be like, sorry, mate, you're just gonna have to wait for a moment. Unless they're joining the conversation, it's like, you want to try and finish the conversation with the person first. So they feel like they're the most important person. The other person can freaking wait. They're the one who's come over, and like you'd have to be like absolutely like completely unobservant to just like, oh, these two people are talking, my conversation's more important. Like, the ego on that is insane. Like, and people do it like without thinking. They're just like, oh, I really need to tell him this, or I need to tell her that. And like, they'll just come over and be like, you never guess what happened the other day, and you're like having a really deep, meaningful conversation with someone about, you know, how they're struggling at the moment. And they come with this other thing, and they're like, you're like, And then that can be a situation where in the past, I've also made the wrong decision of turning to them and starting a conversation with them and realize that this other person is just kind of left on hold over here, like listening to fucking weight music while I'm talking to this other person about how he clean pulled 120, and then they're like, bruh, I guess the unimportance that they'll feel in that moment, then they're not less likely to have that conversation, not only with you but other people. So it's like how that one moment or that one decision can indirectly and directly affect both people for a long time. Like that's level of trust that they've built with you.
That comes down to what you said the other week about the phone. Like, you know, the minute, especially when Michael does this, brings out his phone, I stop talking, because I know, one, you're not listening, but two, like, you
attack me.
No, but like honestly, anyone. It could be anyone. The minute, like, if I'm having a conversation with you and you bring your phone out to even just look at the time, I just stop. It's an instant. I can't keep talking because I really know that your attention is not on me and what I'm saying.
But you know, you're not the most important person in that sense. Like, and that we've like I said the other day, it's like we've referred to like the mobile phone as important. It's like, so who's calling me at the moment? Oh, I'm waiting for a message, or I'm waiting for something from someone else. And it's like, yeah, cool, but like there's a conversation right now happening, like, and then it just shows your level, like where you sit. And like sometimes it can be that scenario, like I'm waiting for my, you know, the hospital call about my wife, she's pregnant. I'm waiting for, you know, some urgent news, and
you just say that in the moment.
Yeah, you just got to be honest with them and be like, hey, like sorry that I've got my phone around me and like I'm checking it. This is the reason why. And people be like, oh yeah, no worries, like that's cool. 99 times out of 100 though, it's I'm just scrolling on Instagram or some chick.
Habit. People just open their phones out of habit.
Comfort. It's for comfort, because like being awkward and anxious, it's what the most comfortable thing you go to is pulling out your phone and being like, oh, cool. Like there's nothing on here, but nothing is better than doing nothing. Like people just struggle to sit in a room and just sit there. And I've been really good with that. I feel like personally, like I don't even have my phone in this room. I don't think I can't even find it. So that just shows my level of care about it. You know what I mean? Like, and I'll be like, fuck. And then they're like someone will call me and I'm like, and someone's like, you gonna answer that? I'm like, I don't recognize the number. So I just hang up on them. I was like, if they were important, they would be in my contact list. So that's, and like they'll send a message if they need. Yeah, that's what I mean. But that's true. Like if they're really important.
Hospital's number on your speed dial.
There was that statement. It's like, if your opinion is important enough to me, you'll be able to text it directly to me.
Yeah.
So it's like, if you don't have my direct contact number, your opinion probably doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, exactly. Or at least like, you know, you're favorited on Instagram or something so that your videos and stuff comes up first. Because in that other case, it's like, well, then you're probably, not that important.
Well,
to
it's
that
more
person.
the personality critique. So it's like, if you're like Jess, so she called me out and communicated, like communicated that to me, that she doesn't like that. So I make an effort now to not do it.
Yeah.
But if she didn't communicate it with me, I wouldn't have had any idea.
And it's the other side of it too. Like, even today, like we did the class workout of the day together. And we started, and like I've been worried and concerned about my leg with the cleans. I've been working on. I draw like this little box on the ground. You'll see it around the gym. There'll be little squares.
I didn't know why that was on the ground.
And it's just so that in the video I can watch myself and where my foot moves. And in case because I've been jumping to the right side, both with the clean and the snatch, and it's causing a lot of pain. And anyway, I was just more hesitant of doing that. And in my internal dialogue was like, oh, I'm just going to go back to 2. I don't want to slow Michael down. I want him to still get the equivalent workout. And he's just like, nah, do 3. I was like, yes, sir. Like, didn't even fight it. I was just like, yep. And then the first round was a struggle. Like, it was a little bit slower. I watched the video back and it was definitely my slowest round. And then we started to pick it up and I actually gained momentum during the workout because it wasn't hurting. And we actually did very well. But it was cool, like, to have that, just like a little bit of a call out, just be like, hey, like, do 3. Like, that's all I needed. I was very easily pushed over the edge. It wasn't like, no, I should. I was just like, yes, sir, I'll do 3.
But I didn't give you a choice.
No, exactly.
So, and it was like, it's what we talk about all the time, where it's be present and understand when that dialogue is happening. So as soon as you said that, I just responded with a positive.
Yeah.
And then you had no choice but to just do what was said.
It was also, I'd been like, I would never heard the end of it. If it was like, I did 2, you did 3, and like I already gave him shit because he did less bench than I did. It's like he did like literally like because he asked me, he's like, do I look skinny in the video? I was like, your bench bar looks skinny. It's missing a plate each side. So even though it's like a little bit of a good competition, but at the same time it was good in the moment because it was like I knew like he would flog me at that workout, so it was like I needed that push, and I wasn't as slow or as I guess unfit as I thought I was. I actually held pretty well towards the end, so that's some positive news, and that actually is, funnily enough, it's going to bring us into our today's topic, and we're going to talk about resilience and having difficult conversations. And we've already started with some difficult conversations, you know, a bit of call out culture, a bit of being accountable for your actions. Today we're going to be joined by Alex. Alex is a member here at Unbound Athletic. How long have you been a member?
I think just before COVID, I signed up. I remember it was maybe a couple weeks before all the lockdowns and stuff happened. So that was like starting to get into the CrossFit scene, and then obviously the pandemic happened and it was like on hold for like, what was it, like 3 months we were locked down for, and then after that I like tried to bounce back into it since then. So
yeah, wow, that's probably for an affiliate, I know Michael would agree, the toughest time for CrossFit, like especially with CrossFit itself, like for a lot of people training at home was very difficult, like, and they realized it quickly, and it's quite funny, the open gym culture we have here. There's a bunch of people who do open gym training, they do their own programming and whatever, and it's like, that's cool, like it's cool to do your own thing. They don't participate in class, things like that, but you really quickly see that like they're actually the type of people who excelled in COVID, and the people who relied on that community aspect, relied on showing up at a specific class with a specific type of a group of people every day to push them and to have that chat kind of community, a catch-up session. They struggled the most. And like, yeah, you tried as an affiliate to do some online stuff, like to program like at-home workouts, and like to the sense of it, it was just boring and bland. You just did it because you were going insane and you wanted to have just some sort of human interaction with people, but that would have been a hard time to join. Michael, for you as an affiliate, what was the biggest struggles that you saw from members during COVID that you had to overcome as an affiliate owner?
Yeah, there was many. Most of it was mental. The physical side of things, everyone kind of still had the drive because the habit was already there. So they'd already been turning up at 5 a.m. or things like that. Like you said, the community element was kind of removed. So everything went to online, where it was Skype. We lent out equipment or hired it out, and we tried to still run Zoom workouts and things like that. Everyone ended up being on different schedules. A lot of people didn't really have that purpose or that routine, and that threw them out. And I think it was a big highlighter in terms of how much routine is actually important in your life. So going and structuring and being like, all right, well, I'm training at 5 a.m. 4 or 5 days a week. That's part of my routine to look after myself. And it just got harder and harder. Like, initially everyone was really, really keen, and then it just dropped off and dropped off and dropped off. And it all started with that mental side of things. The mental state, it's such a big part, and a lot of people, they rely on the energy in the room. So we were just touching on it before, like a lot of the body language, a lot of the communication elements that we take for granted were now removed. So if someone did come in and have a bad day, but they were now going to be around people who they were all bubbly and positive, they could feed off that. It made them feel better. And then it definitely made it a lot easier for them to tolerate whatever they were going to go through with the workout. That was all removed. And as soon as, it took a while for people to bounce back. Like if we look at our trends in terms of like attendance and things like that, as soon as we came back, it was slow. Like it was not floodgates like everyone thought it was going to be. Everyone was like, all right, you can go back to work now. But it was just drip feed, drip feed, drip feed, which is weird because you would have thought people would have been like, nah, I've got to get out and move. But because it was such a long period of time, it became normalized to not get up and move, to not get out of the house. I'm a big advocate of home is home. So I don't like the idea of working from home. I think it's silly. I don't like the idea of training at home. I think it's silly because communication and interaction with different dialogue and diverse conversation and other people with other experiences is such a big part of living. And we almost remove that when we do that. We don't get to have these interactions at the gym with other people with other industries because now we're training at home. Or if I'm working from home, I don't get to have that communication element in that office space with other people. And it might be something as simple as talking about what they did on the weekend. Yeah. And they're talking about the fact that they went skydiving, but now it crosses your mind and you're like, oh, well, I've never done that. Maybe I should try something new. And all of that gets removed. And it has a bit of a compounding effect now where people just, they stop growing and stop developing because they just stop looking for new experiences.
Yeah. And that's on the counterpoint to that, actually, which is quite funny because I'm a big advocate of the home gym.
Yeah, you're the opposite to me.
But one thing I do agree with is you tend to lean towards what you would do regardless of motivation. So there's always those things that you lean towards. Like, let's say you're having a bad day, you look at the class workout and it's just like 30 minutes of just straight, of a movement or a modality that you hate. For me, it would be cardio. Like, I just have no interest in self-training cardio outside of like CrossFit and the class and like training with other people. So when COVID happened, for me, it was weightlifting. I just maintained weightlifting. Everything else went out the window. I didn't even care. Like, it was just like, that was the one thing that I could do intrinsically without any additional motivation or any external factors. Like, I could just do that and I would be happy. And I guess that's for me, like, that was my own pushback, was like, I needed that community to make me do I still did cardio workouts and stuff, but I programmed it towards my strengths and I just avoided all the weaknesses. Like, I didn't touch a gymnastic movement for ages. Like, I'd do some like echo bike stuff, but the echo bike's my favorite, so it's pretty easy to jump on something you enjoy, and I was less likely to do those uncomfortable things just purely because like there wasn't other people around me doing them with me. There was no shared trauma, and I guess that was the biggest thing for me. Like, then I just got really good at lifting, but then I was super unfit, come back with a big gut, like just loved food. Like the habits remained the same from when I was doing more cardio and higher volume training, but like it didn't replicate for the habits that I was putting in at home. So I definitely saw a decrease in my overall fitness in that time period. And it was a long lasting effect for a long period of time. It took me a while to bounce back. What about you, Alex?
I know I agree more with Michael when it comes to like home is home. I know during that like lockdown period, like I just couldn't really do sessions, or just like it was just boring. Like I go home to relax, not really think about anything or anything like that, and I prefer the community side of things. Even if I was just to come in the middle of the day and to train and stuff, I still rather come here and even train by myself than do it at home personally. So like during that period, I definitely couldn't like train at home or anything like that. It was definitely more just like finding a space that I enjoy to do that.
It's very easy to overlook the importance of that balance and change of environment, like that stimulus of just different colors, different conversation, different noises. There's a lot of things that are going on that are helping us develop that we aren't even aware of. It's all subconscious, like it's just happening in the background, and we remove that. And I think we've seen that with society. Like, I don't know about you guys, but it feels like we've just been stalled for 3 years. Yeah. Since 2020. It doesn't feel like anything's got done.
No, and it's like people are more comfortable working at home. People struggle to actually put in. I feel like since that time period, people are less likely to be hard workers. They've ingrained themselves like with this mindset of like, oh, I can work from home. I want a life that suits my needs and my stuff. But they don't actually know what their needs are. They don't know what their lifestyle should look like. They just know that it's easy to not have to wake up and sit in traffic. They know it's easy to not have to go into a physical workplace, on like 3 or 4 days a week. They can stay at home. And for some people, it generally works. Like if you work like 2 or 3 hours drive away, 100%, that is way easier. But if you're like worried about driving 15 minutes down the road to your office because you just don't want to like spend time with people and have to have those hard conversations with random people that you don't know or people you generally don't get along with, like how are you going to grow and develop as a person when it comes to the time when you need to have those hard conversations and you're not conditioned to doing it? And the other thing I was thinking about with the home training as well, a lot of people they tried their best, but like you said, like the drop-off happened. And the drop-off happened purely because they didn't have that other person there that they normally would in those time scenarios. The accountability, like you see it in CrossFit gyms all the time. Like someone will send you a message like, I haven't seen you in 6 a.m. class for 3 or 4 days now. Are you okay? Like you'll just get someone like that who's caring, who knows like that, you normally show up at that time. And it could simply be like a shift change, or like maybe if you've been sick for a few days, and then you're like, oh shit, like, you feel bad. You're like, damn, mate, maybe I should be going in. Like, no, I'm sick. Like, I'm coming in tomorrow. And then you just reassure them, like, yes, no, I'm all good. I'm coming in. But in COVID, like, everyone was so down and worried about themselves and not worried about dying and, not getting coughed on by some stranger. They just didn't make that effort to, like, message loved ones or people that was close to them before. So then that intrinsic motivation kind of disappeared, and all they were left with was what they could see. And you saw, like, during that time period, it was the highest rates of, like, heart attacks, like depression, like a lot of things happened in that time period that normally wouldn't happen if you could go outside and have those conversations with people. Because like you said, Michael, people lean on that. They come in with a bad day. They need a couple of bubbly people around them to give them that like boost in confidence. So, but looking at resilience itself, there's a definition here that I've got. This is the dictionary definition for resilience. But what we want to ask each other, I guess, is what is your own definition of resilience? So the dictionary definition first is the capacity to withstand or to recover quickly from difficulties or toughness. So there's a quote here that says, "The oak fought the wind and was broken. The willow bent when it must and survived." So I guess for me, if I was going to give my personal definition of resilience, I believe resilience in a lot of ways is discipline, I guess, without motivation. So to be resilient and be disciplined through the hard times, the boring moments, without relying on external motivators to get you there, that's resilience. Like, because it's very easy if someone came up to you and was like, "Hey bro, you're looking big." Like, you're like, "Oh yeah, I got to keep working out." Like, cause that person gave me that compliment. Like that compliment's not going to come around. Like you can't wait for it. Like, even though I don't wait for that compliment, it's just a pretty average example. It's kind of like, if you're aiming to get for me, like working on a snatch at this rate almost seems silly, because it's like last time I PR'd my snatch was in COVID. It was 2020. So it's been now over 3 years, 3.5 years since I've PR'd a snatch. So it's like, why am I fucking working on a snatch if I haven't PR'd? But it's like, I've seen other things, like techniques improved, mobility has gotten better. I PR'd a power snatch recently, and it was like, okay, so it is still moving the needle. It's just not at the rate that I would like it. And it's like, what can you do? And like resilience in that moment is like, okay, you keep showing up. You start snatching more instead of less. Like, don't let that throw you off. That to me is resilience. What about for you, Alex? What is resilience for you?
I was going to say more like being resilient is really trying to show your mind to the direction of like where it should be going, if that kind of makes sense. So like how you said, like, you shouldn't really wait for like, someone to come up to you and, tell you like a compliment or anything like that. Because again, you don't get that every day, every second. So like, you may get that in the afternoon, but you won't get that maybe tomorrow. And then all of a sudden your mind's like starting to talk to you and stuff. So what I've been trying to tell myself is like trying to be resilient with, yourself. If you are by yourself, you got to really try and strengthen your mind to find a better pathway, instead of like kind of going in that one direction and letting all like whatever you got going on kind of like consume you, kind of.
Yeah, and it's obviously you're talking more about how you react to things. So a lot of times something might happen and your mind goes negative straight away. But instead of what you're talking about is instead of making an action or a choice based on that negative mindset, you're actually challenging yourself to reframe it in a positive way.
Yeah, and that's like kind of like the big challenge I got going on right now is really trying to like, again, give my mind that resilience, because this is something that I've always wanted to work on and that I avoided, and now like through what's been happening and everything, it's something that I'm really trying to tackle, which obviously it's definitely not easy, which comes to again being resilient with your mind with it.
When you look at competency, a lot of the times competency is seen as confidence, and the ability to be good at something means people will view you differently. They'll be like, oh wow, he's really good at X, Y, and Z. You're competent, so you don't need to have that inherent resilience, because people are giving you that artificial resilience all the time. They're like, hey bro, you're so good at, or you're, hey man, you look really good today. And it's like, you get that like bump up of ego almost, because you're like, fuck yeah, I'm good. But it's those things that you're not good at, that's where you require it. Like, you almost like if you could think of like a legitimate skill, like V-ups for me, that still is to this day. And it's something that like, I needed to make the intention to work on it, because otherwise, like, me just being like, I'm bad at V-ups and just succumbing to the fact that I'm never going to be good at them is a very pessimistic way to think about it. It's not the way that we should be leading by example, saying like, hey, you are bad at something. Maybe, yeah, my mechanics aren't great, or maybe my levers aren't suitable to be able to perform it effectively without effort. And that's the key thing, without effort. Because as soon as I started putting in some effort, Michael made a cue, or he may have made a point. He was like, hey, like, maybe lead with your chest first. And then things started to come together a little bit more, and it kind of changed my mind from I'm just bad at these to I just need a little bit more work than the average person. And something that my mum told me very recently was that I was born with a bunch of these conditions and issues that I could have used to my disadvantage, but in the short term to my advantage, where people were like, hey, you can't do this, or you struggle doing this. Why is that? And I could have just been like, oh, I'm dyslexic, or, oh, I'm, X, Y, and Z. This is the reason. I put a label on it because, a doctor told me so. But my mum avoided telling me that till I was 27, because she just wanted me to think that it was just a different way of learning. I had to learn things a little bit differently to other people. My body responds differently to certain things. And that's how my mum framed it. Like, she framed it like, you're just different to other kids because, you struggle a little bit more with learning. You just got to put more effort into learning, certain things, instead of telling me, hey, you're autistic. Like, because then you can use that as an excuse for the rest of your life. Anyone asks you to do something, you can't do it. I'm just autistic. I can't do it. And then it's like, it's just a default excuse. And it's like, I don't need to learn double unders. Why? Oh, I'm autistic. I'll never learn them anyway. And if you have that mindset with everything, like, you just get nowhere doing anything. So for me, like, I just learned a way around it. Instead of like in class at school, they would teach you like, I'll write it down so you can remember it. Like, no, that's not how I learn. I was like, I'm just going to watch someone else do it, and then I'll copy them. And then I'll copy them enough that I actually pick it up. That's how I do it with movements. I'll see Michael do something like, oh, he does, in his clean, he shrugs like this certain way, or he like pulls at this certain time and chucks his elbows through. Then I copy it. Once I copy it, I get it. And that's how I learn guitar too. I don't read tablature. I can't read tablature because the words just fly off the paper at me and it just means nothing. But I'll just pull up a YouTube video of someone playing, and then I'll just copy their fingers, and then I'll play it, and it sounds exactly the same. So it's just, I think for me, it was finding ways to make things work for me and not using I'm bad as an excuse. And that to me is the definition of resilience. What about you, Michael? What is your definition of resilience?
My definition of resilience is your ability to turn up irrelevant of the result. So you touched on discipline. So for me, resilience is when things aren't going your way, you still turn up and you still give everything or do your best. And that's the hardest part. I think that's the part that people kind of neglect. They don't really understand what resilience means. And the one thing that we're always going to be guaranteed, and we were talking about this today because Alex was messaging me, is the one thing that life will guarantee you is that it's going to throw you curveballs and it's going to give you shit. And it's how you respond to that shit and those curveballs that dictates who you become and where you go. And rather than allowing it to consume you and overwhelm you, and break you, you've got to make sure that you take it on board and you use that opportunity with your friends around you, like your contact groups, whatever you have, to make sure that you come out of it better. You come out of it more resilient. And part of that is you just keep turning up. And Alex is a perfect example of that. We'll touch on that now, where Alex will give a bit more of a background of what he's been going through. But one thing he's done extremely well is he just keeps turning up to the gym. Like, he has every reason not to. Everything going in his life at the moment is challenging him and it's testing him, and he's going through that. And he's still choosing to turn up. He's still choosing to look in and work on himself. And it's not easy. It's not going to be easy. Alex, maybe you want to touch on that a bit for the listeners.
Yeah, so I think it's probably been about 3 months now. I end up losing my dad to his battle for cancer, which, you know, at the end of the day, I'm happy he's not hurting or anything like that. It was a long 5 years of him just somewhat suffering. And then pretty much after that point, I really noticed there was a big shift and change in my just mindset, mental health, and, you know, touching on like not being resilient of like, you know, the situation, what's been going on with my family and stuff, which end up pushing my ex-partner away, and that end up also curveballing. So it's kind of like, again, really trying to accept the factor, or again, been talking to Michael heaps about it, which I normally firstly never do. I normally am not a talker, and that was again one thing, using the word resilience again, trying to, you know, change personally, and using the gym to come in and really, no matter what, like just come and just do something. So like I know like when I was talking to like the Utah, like I hurt my shoulder on the Monday, you know, doing our good old handstand walking, and I just come and now sit on the bike, because personally, instead of me just sitting at home doing nothing, staring at the roof or something, I again use that community to come in, and I just come and just talk to people, sit around, watch the classes, because just personally that's just something trying to do differently compared to what I've done in the past, which is block everyone out, you know, not really do anything, not reach out, talk to any of the people or anything like that. And just over time talking to Michael, and, you know, kind of like the advice that he's given me, like what he said today, was just still coming just to show up. And that's what I'm really just try to tell myself every day, because at the moment, like right now, God is really throwing all the challenges in the world at me, and like I wouldn't wish it upon anyone to experience it, but again, really trying to accept the words that, you know, Michael and heaps of other people have said, like you need, like, use this time for growth. And I know like in about 6 months time, my future self will probably be looking back and like forever grateful for the, you know, the growth I put in to really show, like, you know, the new mindset of being resilient, of no matter what kind of gets thrown at me, I know I can go down a different path and really like use that to overall grow.
Yeah, exactly. And on the other side of it, like everyone who makes money lost money at some point. Everyone who has grown fell apart at some point, and that's something that no one really kind of talks about. Like for me, like I literally broke down yesterday, and it's something I would never do. Like I would never cry, and yesterday it just all got to me. Everything just kind of tipped me over the edge, and I fell apart, and I had that point where I was like, okay, like I'm done. But instead of doing that, I just was like, nah, you pick yourself up, like you pull yourself together, and you just deal with it. And part of it was just letting myself feel and letting myself go through that experience. And I know if I don't do that, I can't help other people, because then how am I going to ever be able to help someone if I couldn't even help myself? And that's one thing to look forward to, is once you go through all this, there's always going to be that push-pull. Like you're going to feel like you're making progress, and then you're going to get pulled back a little bit, and then you're going to make some progress, and you're going to get pulled back a little bit. But the one thing that's on your side is time. All right, and each time that happens, it gets a little bit easier and a little bit easier and a little bit easier, and you get better at doing it. And then, like you said, in 6 months' time, if something happens in the friendship group, you're now there. You're the person who can help other people. You're the person who can help build other people up as well. And that's where we want to be. Like, we want to be able to lean on each other.
And I think something to touch on that's really important to pull out of that conversation too was the thing that Alex said, that was like, you just showed up, not because, you know, you were going to you felt bad because you were missing the gym. You weren't guilty because you were, you know, taking a rest day or something like that. But it was because you wanted to fill that time gap with what you normally fill it with, which is showing up to the gym. And Michael actually said this in a very early podcast that we spoke about, is when you get sick, or, you know, when you're injured, or, you know, obviously in this case you are injured, you should still fill that time gap in your day with even just coming to the gym and sitting in the car park, or coming in and sitting like on a bike and talking to people. And even if you're not actually achieving anything physically, like mentally blocking out that time will keep that habit. And that's what, when we look back at the the whole situation with COVID, that's what really broke down for a lot of people, is they lost that habit. They lost that time period of the day where they would show up to a certain location to do a certain task. And in this case, it was fitness. Like, you're still showing up, you're on the bike, you're still having those same conversations you would have regardless. Yeah, you might not be achieving much this week in the gym, but what you have achieved long term is maintaining that habit that you've, put in over weeks and months and years, that you're not just going to lose. Because one thing about habits is it takes 21 days to form a habit, 90 days to keep it. It takes 1 day to break it. So you just don't want to lose that habit at any point. And like you said, if you went home, stayed at the wall, stayed at the roof, like just pitied yourself, but like, fuck, why me? Why not someone else? Why is it me that has to deal with that? You're just not going to progress as a person. Instead, you were like, those thoughts don't need to just be for me. I can look at, vocalizing them to other people. That's something that I've worked on quite heavily with my psychologist. Was when I was in the military, there was a lot of stress I was exposed to that I didn't know how to mentally deal with or how to talk to, because there was no one I could talk to who would understand, because I didn't understand myself why I was stressed. And it turned out a lot of it was due to a stigma I created for myself, which is whenever there was an uncomfortable or hard conversation that came up, I just pushed my emotions down. Instead of having the hard conversation, I avoided it. And eventually over time, by avoiding that hard conversation, it's the death by 1,000 cuts. It got to a point where I eventually exploded in one way or another, whether it was anger, sadness, or just like complete, utter loss for my, my own physical and mental capabilities. So to have those conversations can be really good. What do you think for you personally, Alex, has been something that's worked for you to have not only the hard conversations with other people, but yourself?
Well, funny enough, that is something I'm still trying to actually catch my head around, because personally, from past experience, I am definitely a avoider. And again, to really make an example, I normally would never reach out to Michael or to you or to anyone in the gym. It would just be me and feeling like I need to just bubble it all up. The only person I recently in the past even thought about reaching out to was actually my dad, and kind of was realizing that he's removed out of the picture of what happened, trying to adjust to have those uncomfortable conversations is still something I'm actually trying to work on. And I know the first step for me to try and overcome that is by reaching out and, me letting people know, I'm not okay, type of situation. And then for me, that's the first step of trying to get out of that mindset of being in an uncomfortable conversation. And then from there, obviously developing to be able to, have them in person when you can, depending obviously whatever the situation is.
Yeah, it definitely comes down to, the next challenge now is you're opening up and you're being vulnerable. It's gonna be the actions and the choices that we decide to make now, and that's for all of us. We were talking today and we said to him, it might just be time to try something new. So try and fill that time with, for us, we started learning guitar. We started trying to find something new to, it's not necessarily about occupying yourself or distracting yourself. It's more about
the challenge
and the purpose. And so it's all right, well, I just need something new. Because it's that the idle hands be the devil's play toy. It's that's where we get into trouble, when we have nothing to do or we're not stimulated, especially now with this kind of economy and society, the way things are, we're always highly stimulated. So when we don't have anything and we have to sit there and go through our thoughts, we just don't know how to control it and we become overwhelmed.
Yeah. And this is an uncomfortable conversation. This is probably the most uncomfortable talking about all of this I'll ever be in my life. But as of right now, this is almost that next step from personally reaching out to people. That was kind of the, breaking the boundary, and now this is kind of step 2, being able to just openly now just talk about it, because that's something that I would just never used to do. But just, upon recently, as I've been trying to reach out to people, it's like you said, being resilient to try and, change your mindset around to being able to, be in those uncomfortable situations, because it's the only way you can really grow. And that's something slowly, I'm telling myself, because there are times where, your mind gets a bit too overwhelmed and again, start crying and, get emotional. But then after that point, once you get everything all out and stuff, you you can kind of like take a step back, you know, and then realize, you know, it's okay to have those type of conversations and to be kind of like where you are with it all.
Yeah, and like for me, past me, it would have been like dive into the video games and like get lost in a artificial reality, because like dealing with the problem head on was just too much of a hard conversation or a hard scenario to put my head around. And working with the psychologist, she said to me, like, the first thing you should do is, in the moment when the uncomfortable situation arises, if you have like a good friend, a family member or a partner, just vocalize that you're not okay at the moment, something's going wrong. And the thing for me was I was telling Michael this today, like because we were talking about like how do you deal with like feelings you don't understand, and that's really hard, like especially for men, like dealing with feelings you don't understand. Like we've always been taught, like, you know, harden up, stop being a pussy, like that was the stigma when we all grew up. It was
cement.
yeah, you know, fucking, you know, it's just like I used to have my football coach never used to let us drink water. This is terrible now I think about it, because he's like, soft people drink water. He's like, are you guys soft? He was conditioning us for like long football games, but at the same time it was just the whole mindset behind it was silly now that I think about it. But in the moment, like, no one would drink water. He's like, who wants to drink? Everyone would just like refuse. People were passing out, like were collapsing, because they were so like, but the mindset behind it was negative. Whereas in the whole idea of like, okay, something's happening right now, like I'm anxious, I'm upset, I'm angry, and I just be like, hey, this is what I'm feeling right now. I don't know why I'm feeling it, and then maybe we can kind of work out together where it started from. But I'm just letting you know, instead of just going from a happy chirpy me, like, whoo, day is cool, like it's raining outside but I don't care, and then to be like all like closed off, and like they say a joke or they're like messing around, you're just like whatever. Like then like the other person's like, well, have I done something wrong? Is it on me? And it never normally is. For me, it was always the inability to express the emotions I was feeling, purely because I wasn't vocalizing it. It was in my head, like, I'm pissed, like, or like, I can't believe they said that to me. Like, I should say something and just won't. I just freeze and just be like, you know what? I'll just push it down that dark place. And then that place gets full eventually. And then eventually you'll break down, or you get angry, or you snap. And then that's what happens from a lot of fights that relationships generally have. Isn't from one little bad thing. It's not from leaving the dish in the sink. It's not from, leaving a little few crumbs on the bench. It's because you do that so often, they tell you off from it. You never change. And eventually it gets to a point where neither person has communicated their frustrations in a way that you can work on it, and someone just snaps. And it's like I said, it's a collective of small problems that creates a big problem. And if you just address the very first small problem, hey, put your dirty washing in the basket, no worries, you do that, there's no problem is solved. But for some reason, like, just having those conversations can be hard. What about you, Michael? What is a hard conversation for you to have that you've been trying to work on recently?
Yeah, so hard conversations are generally going to be critiques, or we call them negative, but we can frame them in a positive way. And something I've been practicing in coaching itself is, we had some people ask, and they were like, oh, can you just give more positive feedback? And we were thinking about from a coaching point of view, and it's like, I understand what they're trying to say, because they do want a bit of like that support, but then at the same time there is a way to frame a negative as a positive. And I was thinking about it in terms of a friendship group, and a conversation that Byron and I had. And one of the conversations that Byron and I had was talking about how your friend responds to a problem you bring up. And an example he used is, he was having a really bad day, all right, and everything was going wrong, and shit was legit going wrong. And the friend wasn't like, no, it's all okay. Like, and that tends to be everyone's first response, where it's like, you go, I'm going to be positive, but you're just fucking lying. Like, and that's not healthy either. Like, it is not healthy to create a false reality with these lies. And he was saying, one of his friends just said to him, he's like, yeah, shit is wrong and shit is going bad, but if anyone can get through this and sort it out, you can. And it was literally like, I just support and believe in you, and I feel like you have the ability to do that. And that took what was a negative situation and gave him the ability to now be like, nah, you're right, I can definitely deal with it. And I was thinking of it in terms of a coaching thing, where it's like, nah, Tyler, that clean wasn't good. Like, I'm not going to lie to you and be like, yeah, that clean was good. But I can respond and be like, but if anyone's going to correct it, you will.
Yeah.
And it's more about how you finish the topic. It's not about how the conversation starts. It's more about how it finishes that's important. And that's something I'm trying to work on. So obviously in business, I've got to have these conversations where it's like, we're not signing up enough members, we're not making enough money, we're not doing this. Like, it can seem like it's very negative because that's what you're looking for. You're looking for the line in the grass because you don't want to get bit. Like, you want to be successful. But it's trying to make sure that you're finishing it with a positive light, whether it is just instilling belief in someone and that's a big thing for us at the moment. Like, it's going to be belief in the team. So it's like, we all believe in each other, we all have faith in each other, and we know it's not just going to fall into our lap, and that's the point. But we're going to make sure that we're ready to work and earn it.
Exactly. Any, because I think that would be a good position to end the podcast, but from you, Alex, any closing notes for the listeners out there on how they can be more resilient and how they can have more difficult conversations with themselves?
I definitely feel like really being out of your comfort zone to try and kind of change that mindset of how to approach what situation it is, what your situation is very important. Not kind of like just like letting it bottle in and just like letting your mind go a little crazy and stuff. Like, if you don't normally reach out to people, reach out, have those uncomfortable conversations with your parents, your sisters, your friends, no matter who it is. And really like understanding like the only way you can develop as a person is being resilient. So no matter what the situation is, it can be absolutely anything. And it's kind of like, really using that to help you grow because, like Michael has said, like life just throws so many curveballs at you and, life's not meant to be easy. It's not, you're not meant to just cruise all the way through and then, pop $1 million in your account. Like, you got to go through some very uncomfortable situations and very uncomfortable conversations for you to get to where you want to be. And, I think it's just realizing that, again, the world, the universe is going to throw absolutely everything at you. But, you shouldn't let that, like, bottle in. You need to really, like, not manipulate your mind, but grow yourself to where you can, like, conquer all those walls you have to climb over.
And definitely, and boys listening, sometimes just give each other a hug.
Yeah.
Like, we don't even need to say anything. The amount of times that, like, it's happened here before where it's like you just go up and you give your mate a hug. Like, that's enough.
Most guys would be like, oh, that's bloody pussy and all that stuff. But like, no, like Michael's done it to me almost every day I've come in and just, just says, how you doing? Just gives a hug. And that bubbly feeling that he kind of just now pushed out of him kind of like went into me. And all of a sudden, like, my mind of like, oh, I'm just gonna, I just want to come in and just, be in my little bubble when I'm in the gym, let's say, is kind of like now popped. And all of a sudden, like, my mind is just a bit in a different way of like, how I'm feeling around people. And then now that will bounce off to me, to other people, because, he's kind of like started off that, like, that good connection straight on.
Yeah, and he's not allowed you to stay in that little bit of like a headspace that you were in prior to coming into the gym. And that's part of, I guess, the good part about your membership as well. It's like, it's not just, coaching and equipment. It's like the byproduct of all that, or the side effect of that is the people that you come in and see. Like, generally people in CrossFit gyms and affiliates are like-minded people in so many ways. Like, that's why people are so easy to get along with so many different people who work different jobs and have different experiences in life, is because they all generally have one thing in common, that is that they put their health and fitness first. And part of health and fitness is mindset, and it's something that generally gets left out from the average population. The elites obviously talk about it being such a big portion of their training, but for all of us, we can benefit from it in some ways or the other, because we create this artificial stress here so that in the real world, when real actual problems happen, like, you get hurt, something goes wrong, like, you're able to at least deal with it, or you have some tools that you can deal with it better than what you would if you didn't have something like the affiliate behind you, or like the lessons that you learn inside the gym doing a hard Fran or like a long workout, that you have to have those conversations with yourself, like, I can do this. I am better than I think I am, and I'm more than well equipped to be able to get through this. It's just a lot of short-term battles like that over a very long period of time will give you the ability in that actual scenario, that real life scenario when it happens, to be like, no, I can still get through this. It's hard and I understand that, but I've got the people, I've got the tools, I've got the ability to get through that. But I think that's a really nice place to end episode 34. We have Alex joining us, and hopefully he'll have another episode where he joins us again.
Yeah, I think we should check in with him in 6 months.